A wildfire just crossed 65 miles of Nebraska grassland in 6 hours. It burned faster than some people could drive away from it. The Morrill Fire is now the largest in the state's recorded history, and it is one of 4 fires that started the same night. Combined, they have burned over 800,000 acres. Hundreds of families have been forced to leave, and as of right now, none of them are fully contained. Then, on the evening of March 12th, everything that had been building across western Nebraska for months arrived all at once. Wind gusts above 60 miles per hour swept across the panhandle and tore a power pole from the ground near Angora in Morrill County. The downed line hit dry grass. Governor Jim Pillen later said the cause was electrical. Within minutes, a wall of flame was racing southeast across the Sandhills. The speed of it is what sets this fire apart from anything Nebraska has seen before. Satellite data from GOES 19 first picked up the Morrill Fire at 7:39 p.m. By midnight, 350,000 acres had burned. At its peak, the fire covered 10 miles in under 15 minutes. Firefighters could not get ahead of it. Nobody could. A fire moving that fast does not give you time to load a trailer or round up cattle. It gives you time to get in your truck and go. And even then, some people barely made it. The smoke was so thick in parts of Arthur and Garden counties that drivers could not see the road in front of them. Some lost their way completely. Others abandoned their vehicles and ran on foot through open pasture in the dark. And the Morrill Fire was not the only one. The same wind event sparked 3 more fires across western and central Nebraska on the same night. In Lincoln County, the Cottonwood Fire tore a 30-mile path by morning, reaching 131,000 acres. Near Halsey, a federal planned burn broke free of its boundary in the wind and became the Road 203 fire. It burned 35,000 acres across 4 counties. The Anderson Bridge Fire scorched another 17,000 acres near the McKelvey National Forest in Cherry County. 4 fires, 1 night, 800,000 acres and climbing. On Friday, the day after the fires started, the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency reported 24 wildfires statewide in 24 hours. By Saturday, the Morrill Fire alone had passed 450,000 acres, and all 4 fires stood at 0% contained. Every number was going up, and none of the lines were holding. Pay attention to the timing of this, because it explains everything that comes next. These fires did not come out of nowhere. They landed on top of the fastest drought spread ever recorded in the history of the United States Drought Monitor. In October 2025, just 9% of Nebraska was in drought. Summer rains had been generous. Ranchers were relieved. 5 months later, by March 10, 2026, 89% of the state was under drought. That is an 80-point swing in 5 months. The old record was 51 points. Nebraska shattered it. UNL weather scientist Eric Hunt said it may count as a rare winter flash drought. Some parts of Morrill County may not have seen real rain since October. The state also recorded its 3rd warmest winter on record. The only warmer winters were 1931 and 1934, both during the Dust Bowl. A weak La Niña pattern in the Pacific drove the warm, dry setup. Colorado's snowpack hit an all-time low. And the grass across western Nebraska, which normally would have been frozen and wet in March, was bone dry and standing tall from the good summer before it. All that growth became fuel. Think about that for a second. The rain that made 2025 a good year is part of what made 2026 a disaster. A good grass season followed by a dry winter is one of the worst setups for fire you can get. Tall, dense, cured grass with no moisture in it burns faster and hotter than anything else on the plains. Weeks before the fires started, the signs were already there. NWS North Platte weather forecaster Bill Taylor had warned that the warm, dry pattern showed no signs of breaking. Ranchers across the Panhandle were already worried about their pastures. AccuWeather had flagged Nebraska, along with Kansas, Oklahoma, and eastern Colorado, as facing moderate to high wildfire risk through the spring. The warning was out. The rain never came. That mix of record drought speed, historic winter warmth, and extreme wind is what turned a downed power line into a fire that burned an area larger than Rhode Island. The fire did not just burn grass, it burned people's lives. Rosemary White is 86 years old. She had lived her entire life on a homestead in Arthur County that her great-grandparents got in the 1930s. On the evening of March 12th, a neighbor called to warn her. Her son Roger White, who runs a tire shop in Ogallala, phoned her landline around 7 p.m. to set up a way out. The fire moved so fast that Rose barely made it out. Her homestead did not. Everything on the property burned. Roger told reporters that over 100 years burned to the ground. The house, the barn, the shop, everything. There is nothing left out there whatsoever. A family's entire history on that land wiped out in a single night. Across the burn zone, hundreds of families fled in the middle of the night. Oshkosh resident Cindy Van Newkirk said 3 state patrol vehicles roared onto her property at 12:30 a.m. with sirens blaring, telling everyone to leave. She called the scene a wall of fire everywhere you looked. The Garden County sheriff lost his own home while he was out warning others to get out of theirs. In Oshkosh, a man spent the entire night hauling water by hand to keep flames from reaching his property. When he finished, the sun was coming up and the sky was orange from smoke in every direction. Firefighters driving in from the east described the glow on the horizon as looking like a sunrise coming from the wrong direction. More than 400 volunteer firefighters from over 80 departments across 8 states showed up. The Nebraska National Guard sent 47 soldiers with 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Iowa sent 2 more. Resources came from Utah, Colorado, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Kansas, though a storm shut down Interstate 80 in Wyoming and delayed the Utah crews for hours. The Omaha Fire Department sent a crew for the first time ever to a wildfire in western Nebraska. Fire Chief Kathy Bossman called the request something they had never seen before. On one day alone, helicopters made 68 water drops, totaling more than 46,000 gallons, and it was not enough. The fire that had already crossed 65 miles of grassland in a single night now brought a new problem. When winds shifted direction, that 65-mile-long burn scar became a fire front 60 to 70 miles wide. Burning eastern red cedar trees sent embers 100 yards ahead of the main line. On Sunday, overnight temps dropped below 10 degrees and froze the pumps on firefighting rigs. Crews had to thaw gear with hot water before they could fight the fire again. And then gusts above 50 miles per hour came back Sunday afternoon and grounded every helicopter. Keystone Lemoyne Fire Chief Ralph Moll, in charge of protecting roughly 1,000 homes near Lake McConaughey, said on Saturday evening that he had a bad feeling about the next day. He did not think it was going to be good. His crews cut control lines down to bare dirt with motor graders and dozers. The problem was, the border of the Morrill Fire alone stretched roughly 200 miles. That is longer than the distance from Omaha to North Platte. Holding a line that long with 400 people, many of them volunteers who had not slept in 2 days, is not a fair fight. By the time Senator Pete Ricketts visited, firefighters had gone days without sleep. Ricketts later said on the Senate floor that they were exhausted and called the fires a disaster of a size our state has never seen. The burned area at that point was already closing in on 2% of Nebraska's total land area. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. We cover events like this as they happen. With the full picture, you need to follow what is going on. While the fires were still burning, the money damage was already taking shape across Nebraska's cattle country. The 7 counties under emergency orders are home to more than 700,000 head of cattle and calves. The Morrill Fire alone wiped out grazing land for an estimated 35,000 cows. And all of this hit during calving season, when cows are giving birth and newborn calves are most at risk. A calf born into a burned-out pasture with no grass and no shelter faces a fight for survival from its first day. Ranchers who normally spend March focused on births were instead trying to figure out how to move entire herds to land that no longer existed. Nebraska's cattle industry brings in over $12 billion a year. The national herd is already at 86.2 million head, the lowest since 1951. The fastest drought spread in recorded history just wiped out grazing land across the heart of the country's cow-calf region. DTN livestock analyst Shaylay Stewart warned that the fires will have a grave effect on the cow herd buildback. With the loss of feed and the costs needed to fix ranges and herds, the one thing everyone can be sure of is that this will delay the rebuild. Cattle futures rallied near record highs the Monday after the fires. And all of it is sitting on top of a region where 700,000 head of cattle still need to eat every single day. Lincoln County rancher Owen Johnson lost his shop, his chicken coop, a horse, and all his feed supply in the Cottonwood Fire. He bulldozed a 120-foot-wide firebreak around his property. The fire jumped it. He told reporters about the things you do not think about. As a rancher, he took it for granted that he always had his pliers, his fence stretchers, wire, staples, all the things you need to keep going. After the fire, he did not have any of it. Miles of fencing burned across hundreds of thousands of acres. Without fences, ranching does not work. Rebuilding them takes months and costs tens of thousands of dollars per mile. And fencing is not the kind of thing you can rush. Every post has to be set, every wire strung tight, every gate hung. It is slow, hard work on a good day. On burned ground with no roads and no power, it is even slower. Burned pastures may take several growing seasons to come back. For comparison, the 2024 Smokehouse Creek fire in the Texas Panhandle, roughly 1 million acres, caused an estimated $123 million in cattle losses alone. The Nebraska cattlemen launched a disaster relief fund the Saturday after the fire started, collecting donations for feed, fencing, and basic supplies. Governor Pillen signed an order-lifting truck weight limits for vehicles carrying feed and fencing. He pressed USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins for emergency release of Conservation Reserve Program land for grazing, saying ranchers need the ground now to calve their cows. The USDA approved the request across all Nebraska counties. FEMA issued a fire aid grant covering 75% of eligible firefighting costs. A full presidential major disaster declaration was still pending as of March 18th. The 800,000 burned acres sit on top of something much larger than a cattle economy. The Nebraska Sandhills are the largest unbroken grassland left in North America. University of Nebraska researchers call them the world's most untouched prairie, with 85% of the natural land still in its original state. This is not farmland. It has never been plowed. The Sandhills are one of the last places on the continent where the landscape looks roughly the way it did before anyone built anything on it. The Morrill Fire burned through much of the Crescent Lake National Wildlife Refuge, where heat-sensing flyovers showed the vast majority of 21 wetland areas had been scorched. Those wetlands matter. The Sandhills are the second most important waterbird breeding ground on the continent. In nature, fire belongs on this landscape. Before European settlers arrived, lightning and native burning kept the grasslands healthy on roughly 4 to 5 year cycles. Some scientists point out that the fire may actually help by killing off unwanted eastern red cedar, which has been spreading across the Sandhills at about 25,000 acres per year, sucking up soil moisture and cutting into groundwater refill as it goes. That part is genuinely good news for the long-term health of the prairie. The problem is what happens before the grass grows back. The Sandhills are literally sand dunes held in place by nothing except grass roots. Remove the grass and the sand moves. Wind wears away the bare ground and creates blowouts, open patches that spread and deepen until the land looks less like a prairie and more like a desert. Once a blowout opens up, it can take years to close again, even with rain. And beneath the Sandhills sits the Ogallala Aquifer, one of the largest underground water reserves in the world. It gets roughly 66% of its refill through the Sandhills. Rain falls, soaks through the sandy ground, and slowly feeds the water below. Loss of grass cover changes how that works. If enough of that cover goes away, the refill process that 8 states depend on for farming and drinking water slows down. The same aquifer that is already being pumped faster than it can refill in parts of Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. Ranch hand Travis Sullivan, north of Oshkosh, put the stakes plainly. If we get the rain, 100%, the grass will come back. If we do not get it, we are just going to be sand dunes. The Rhode 203 fire also burned about 35,000 acres in and around the Nebraska National Forest near Halsey. That forest is the world's largest hand-planted forest, started in the early 1900s. Research from a similar fire in 2012 showed that natural pine regrowth is very slow and almost not happening without replanting. Burned sections may never see trees again without people stepping in to plant them. Nebraska 2026 fits into a pattern that has been building across the Great Plains for years. The Texas Smokehouse Creek fire in 2024 burned roughly 1 million acres across the Panhandle. The East Amarillo complex in 2006 burned 907,000. All three followed the same setup: bad drought, extreme wind, a single spark, and flat grassland with no natural fire breaks. Nebraska was not the only state burning that week either. Wildfires broke out across South Dakota, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas at the same time, all driven by the same drought and wind patterns sweeping the plains. Statewide temps in Nebraska have risen more than 1.6 degrees over the past century. Fire seasons that used to run summer through fall now basically run year-round. The fastest drought spread on record turned 9% drought into 89% drought in 5 months. And then one spark turned that drought into 800,000 acres of fire. The Great Plains is seeing bigger, faster, more damaging grassland fires during drought years. And the droughts themselves are showing up faster than they used to. As of March 18th, the Morrill Fire is between 18 and 30% contained. Red flag warnings are still in effect. Humidity is forecast to drop as low as 11%. State Forester John Erickson noted that winds shift direction daily, testing containment lines across the fire's 200-mile border every time they turn. 700,000 cattle are still in the affected zone with no grazing land beneath them. The 800,000 acres that have already burned make up nearly 2% of Nebraska's total land area, and the forecast does not show real rain. The grass that held the Sandhills together for thousands of years is gone across an area larger than Rhode Island. Whether it comes back depends on what the sky does next. And right now, the sky is not helping.